on Prime Crime.
Do you remember what you said?
Just stop. Just stop.
The predator no one saw coming.
One of the things that investigators are looking for is what type of victim of this person looking for.
The unimaginable crimes.
And I noticed that he has a erected penis. He said, "Do you see this? Do you like it?"
And how the drama unfolded in court.
It definitely was a very stressful situation.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime. This is where we do a deeper dive into the most high-profile and memorable true crime cases. So we've covered sex crimes before, but some of the acts that you're going to hear about are as shocking as the identity of the man that prosecutors say committed them.
He goes, "I'm gonna take you to the store and I'm gonna fuck you, and if you say anything, I will kill you." And I just froze then.
This is the testimony of a 54-year-old woman who would come to be known as Jane Doe 1. She claims that on March 17th, 2018, out in California, she was picked up by a man in a Jeep, and then he raped her.
He was on top of you.
Right, he was on top of me.
Feel yourself bleeding.
Yes.
Fast forward to May 13th, 2018.
Did you have any indication that you were in danger when you were in his car?
No, he held me, grabbed my arms, and I don't know what else he said, but he says we're gonna have sex. And I said, please don't do this.
This is Jane Doe II, a then 59-year-old transient woman who says that she was sexually assaulted.
He took off his pants.
Did you see his penis?
Yes, I did. At that moment, I said, no, and then I walked away.
A translator is speaking for Jane Doe III, a then 57-year-old Vietnamese woman. She testified that a man who identified himself as David exposed himself to her outside her home.
At first, I think it was difficult for the law enforcement to figure out who was behind these crimes. Jane Doe number 1, she didn't report the crime until 4 days later.
He was black. He had lighter skin. His hair was either it's been crimped a lot or it was just an afro type.
Do you remember what type of car he was in?
Yes.
What type of car was he in?
It was a black Hummer.
When you're dealing with a sexual assault series, one of the things that investigators are looking for is what type of victim of this person looking for. He looked like he was really focusing on victims that were a little more vulnerable. Clearly, he had a predilection for older women.
Multiple victims, all seemingly unconnected attacks, and no perpetrator. That is until June 2018, when a man is caught sneaking into a San Diego trailer park home.
Law enforcement was confronted with these 911 calls from people saying that there was this big African-American guy that was in someone's mobile home. I think that's when it started triggering more of an investigation. And then when one of the neighbors took a picture of his Hummer, I think that's when it started coming to fruition for the prosecution.
The burglary suspect would be linked to the Jane Does, and he would eventually be arrested and charged with 9 counts, including kidnapping, forcible rape, and indecent exposure. To the shock of the world, that suspect was Kellen Winslow II, the famous NFL tight end playing for teams like the Browns, Patriots, Jets, and Buccaneers.
You have someone who is doing phenomenally well. He comes from a legacy of football players. His dad, by the same name, was also a football player. And then you have these charges coming out. And the first reaction you have is, why are you doing this?
Winslow's legal troubles, though, only worsened. Another woman came forward.
Was he having sex with you at the time that you regained consciousness?
Yes.
Jane Doe number 4 said that back in 2003, when she was 17 years old, then 19-year-old Kellen Winslow raped her at a house party.
Do you remember what you said when you were telling him to stop?
Just stop. Just stop.
Did you become upset?
Yes.
Were you crying?
Yes.
Then, in 2019, While Winslow was out on $2 million bail, he allegedly struck again. Now he was accused of exposing himself and masturbating in front of a 77-year-old woman at a gym.
I had to look because he's right on my face, and I noticed that he has a erected penis. He said to me, with a very funny and happy face, "Do you see this?" Pointed his penis. He said, "Do you see this? Do you like it?"
Kellen Winslow was essentially in his prime. He's in his mid-30s at the time. He's a very successful professional football player. The fact that these victims were all pretty much elderly or older in age, that was such a shocking fact to listen to.
There was a lot that didn't quite make sense about this case, and the government would quickly realize there were problems in proving Kellen Winslow committed these crimes.
There isn't a lot of forensic evidence, traditional forensic evidence. And that traditional forensic evidence, hairs, fibers, fingerprints, DNA, there is some DNA, but not a lot.
Up next, did Winslow actually do these things?
You understand that you were under oath?
Yes.
I'm not trying to give you trick questions here. These are just straightforward questions.
I said yes.
When you screamed, was that when he placed his hands around your throat in the way that you just described?
Yes, so strong that I couldn't even speak.
In 2019, NFL tight end Kellen Winslow II was in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. He was accused of committing various sex crimes with respect to 5 women, mostly older in age. The question was, how strong were these cases against him? Let's start with Jane Doe number 1, who said Winslow picked her up in his Hummer one night and sexually assaulted her.
Well, when he inserted his penis, it hurt so bad. I kept on saying, ow, 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 because I don't know how he fit that thing in there. And I just felt this heavy gush of water going.
What did you think it was?
Blood.
when you felt
It was
that?
blood.
She had kept her underwear and her pants that she was wearing during the assault. And so we were able to get a combination of blood and semen from the pants and the underpants. So that is a really big deal.
While it would be confirmed that Winslow's DNA was found on Jane Doe number 1's pants, Winslow never denied the encounter. He just said this was consensual sex and that Jane Doe 1 was lying.
I go, just pull over right next to the hospital.
How did he respond when you told him?
He's like, no, no way, I'll kill you.
Did you want to have sex with him?
No.
I thought that she definitely had some credibility issues as she was recounting what had happened. And I think that her stories they weren't adding up. They just didn't make logical sense.
So we both jumped over the fence. He took his pants off, and then I started taking off my clothes. And he goes, oh no, let's just go back to the car.
She didn't try to get help. She didn't run away, even though the attacker was on the other side of the fence. She didn't call the police, even though she had the cell phone on her.
As for Jane Doe number 2, who claimed Winslow raped her almost 2 months after Jane Doe 1, forensic evidence didn't quite support her account.
There was no DNA. That they did the DNA search regarding the back of the vehicle, the Hummer, and the front passenger seat, and there was not a match for Jane Doe number 2.
Yet, her eventual testimony against Winslow was arguably the strongest piece of evidence.
Can you tell us what you were feeling when he did that?
It's painful.
Did it hurt?
Yes. I just kept my eyes closed.
She looked like she was scared. She looked like she was nervous. And even at one point, she said that she didn't want to look at the attorney cross-examining her because she didn't want to see her rapist.
I don't appreciate it.
Appreciate what?
That I have to look at my rapist.
I thought that was a very chilling part of her testimony because it just lends so much credibility towards her.
When it came to Jane Doe 3, who testified through a translator and accused Winslow of exposing himself while she was outside in her garden.
Are you uncomfortable talking about what the man did that day?
Yes, that is correct.
Not only was this allegation one of the most outrageous, but there was a serious issue regarding identification.
I saw his body only. I didn't look at his face.
Are you Vietnamese?
Yes, I am.
Is there a habit or custom in Vietnamese culture to not look at strangers directly in the face?
Đúng. Yes, that is correct.
She may not have gotten a good look at the perpetrator's face, but Jane Doe III did see something.
What did you see on his arm?
I saw his tattoos from here down to the wrist.
You are dealing with a suspect who is very distinctive looking, big, tall, athletic, and arm sleeve tattoos with very interesting designs on them.
And that's not all she noticed.
Did you see him with a bicycle the first time you met him?
Yes.
Kellen Winslow Jr. was a fan of Strava, that app that allows you to see what kind of routes you're taking, whether you're running or whether you're biking. His Strava app was tracking where he was going on that day and essentially put him one house away from her house at almost the exact time that she's saying that he was there.
Coming up, we'll take a closer look at the stories of Jane Does 4 and 5, which raise some questions themselves.
Is this someone who is sort of jumping on the bandwagon in hopes of getting maybe publicity themselves, maybe a civil suit, maybe something that would benefit them?
Did you call 911 or report what had happened?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I don't know. I just didn't.
In 2019, the sports world was in disbelief that star NFL tight end Kellen Winslow II was accused of committing various sex crimes involving 5 different women. Did Winslow, though, really commit these acts? Jane Does 1 and 2 claim that Winslow sexually assaulted them in 2018, and Jane Doe 3 says Winslow exposed his privates to her outside her home in the same year. Then there were Jane Does 4 and 5.
I opened my eyes and my face was being pushed into Matt's groin area.
Jane Doe 4 says Winslow raped her when she was 17 years old back at a party in 2003 and in the presence of another man named Matt. She said after drinking she lost consciousness, but remembers what happened when she came to.
What was Kellen doing at the time that he was pressing your head towards Matt's groin area?
He was penetrating me from behind.
Was he being forceful with you?
Yes.
In June of 2018, did you receive some information from the news about a pending criminal prosecution against Mr. Kellen Winslow?
Yes. So all of a sudden I see his face and I freak. I click on it and I'm just like, no way. I start crying. I start thinking about what happened.
Kellen Winslow, who is a very highly acclaimed, highly paid football player, and he's brought up on these charges. There's a lot of publicity surrounding it, and now she comes out with her allegations. On one hand, you may say that, okay, the other allegations and people stepping up and coming forward may have given her the confidence to come out. But on the other hand, you also have to think from a defense point of view, are these claims credible?
This time, did you call the police in 2003 to report what Mr. Winslow had done?
I did not. I didn't think anybody would believe anything I had to say.
As for Jane Doe 5,
He was just touching and giving strokes to his penis.
she says while at the gym, Winslow exposed and touched himself on a machine nearby. Then, only days later, she claims he did something even worse.
What did he do when he sat next to you?
I could not see, but I can think what he was doing. He was masturbating.
Jane Doe number 5 was a firecracker. She was, 77 years old, and she was very firm in what she was saying. These incidents with Jane Doe number 5 occurred after he had already posted bail. This is not just a one-time deal. This is a problem and a pattern of a sexual predator. I think the defense did what they could with Jane Doe number 5. Jane Doe number 5 said that Mr. Winslow had been masturbating in the jacuzzi. And of course, the defense attorney really cross-examined her on the fact that she couldn't see what he was doing. There were bubbles. He was a little bit away from her in terms of distance. And so this was all speculation.
The accounts of all 5 women came to a head at Kellen Winslow II's trial, which began on May 21, 2019. The jury had to decide on 12 different counts ranging from forcible rape to lewd conduct.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kellen Boswell Winslow II, guilty of the crime of rape by force or fear. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the crime of indecent exposure. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the crime of lewd conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty of the crime of lewd conduct regarding Jane Doe number 5.
While the jury convicted Winslow of 3 counts and acquitted him of another, they were deadlocked on the remaining 8, and a mistrial was declared as to those charges.
And I think that the defense attorneys did a really good job of saying, listen, you have to look at every person and every victim as they stand alone. I think that some aspects of the victim's testimonies were believable and some aspects were not.
But there's more to the Kellen Winslow story. What happened at his retrial surprised many people.
The testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
More when we return.
Think all court shows are the same?
We're talking about your father. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Think again. Judge Caprio rules with common sense.
I was having contractions. I was rushing to the hospital.
Inspector Quinn, what does justice demand? Jail?
And compassion.
I'm going to take the circumstances into consideration.
The best court experience I've had.
Clearly, Judge, he's been in a court before.
Get caught in Providence.
Hi, I'm Dan Abrams. In the exploding legal and true crime genre, Law&Crime is the only network that has it all.
Good evening and welcome.
This is a complicated case.
Don't really jump to conclusions.
Welcome to Prime Crime Tonight. Another day of drama between both sides.
From multiple live trials daily to original and compelling programming, the Law&Crime Network is everywhere, and we invite you inside the jury box. This is Law&Crime.
Well, he had me take my pants off and pulled me on front of the seat, started to rape me.
November 2019. Kellen Winslow II, once an acclaimed tight end in the NFL with a bright career ahead, now was looking at a very different and uncertain future. A few months earlier, a California jury convicted him of forcible rape, indecent exposure, and lewd conduct with respect to several women. However, the jury was deadlocked as to 8 other charges. The government pressed forward with a new trial as to these counts. As both sides were ready to begin, something unexpected happened.
Have you had enough time to thoroughly discuss this with your attorneys?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, I noticed you looked into the audience. I'm asking you. I'm not asking anybody else because, sir, this is your decision and your decision alone. I think you understand that. You are pleading guilty. Is that your understanding of the plea agreement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Instead of going to trial, Kellen Winslow announced his intention to plead guilty to sexual battery of Jane Doe 1 and the rape of Jane Doe 4, while other charges would be severed or dropped.
This whole thing really just took place off an offhanded comment that we had with the prosecution, and then it just sort of blossomed from there. He has a lot to lose, and in this particular case, he was looking at potentially like 70 to life in prison should he get convicted of any of the multiple victims. And in California, life means life.
Winslow was giving up his rights to a jury trial and to an appeal. The gravity of this decision became apparent in court.
If you give up that right so that you can enter a plea of guilty, you don't have to if you don't want to. As I said, we have jurors out there waiting, and they are willing and able to try this case.
I guess I have to, Your Honor.
No, you don't have to. It's your decision.
He understood what he was giving up. You couldn't tell what was going to happen until the actual time where he was entering the plea. It definitely was a very stressful situation.
How do you plead to count 6? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You did unlawfully commit sexual battery against Jane Doe number 1, a 54-year-old woman. How do you plead to that? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
I'm sorry?
Guilty.
However, at a later hearing, listen to what Winslow asked the judge.
I want to ask a question. I just wanted to know if I was to go to trial, would I get an actual jury of my peers, that people of color that would look like me, would I get a jury trial like that?
You cannot get to another trial unless you make a motion to withdraw your plea of guilty. And you can be sentenced up to 18 years. Is that what you'd like to do? Because we can end this right now.
Oh, no, Your Honor.
I think it was really interesting how Kellen Winslow allocated to these pleas. He didn't seem particularly remorseful. Was he taking real accountability as to his actions and how this will play out, which is something which is taken into account by the judge.
There seems to be a kind of a common thread among the victims. And Mr. Winslow, you carefully selected your victims, those that were most vulnerable.
He kept going and I just kept saying, stop, just stop.
All I know is it hurt.
When you say that it hurt, did you scream?
Yes.
The vulnerability of the victims was no accident. It was the type of victim that you sought out yourself because you felt that perhaps they wouldn't report the crime, and if they did, they would be subject to fierce cross-examination, and hopefully, probably, you were thinking to yourself they wouldn't be deemed to be credible.
As part of the agreement between the defense and the state, Judge Bowman sentenced Winslow to 14 years in prison.
It shows how someone is not above the law. It doesn't matter how famous you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. If you do the crime, you're going to do the time. And I think that Kellen Winslow is a prime example of a case like that.
And that's the story of Kellen Winslow II. The twists, the turns, the absolutely appalling crimes. Look, we may never really understand why Winslow did what he did, but all that really matters is he was brought to justice. And that's all because of the strength of 5 brave women. And that's all we have for you here on Prime Crime. Leave us your comments on Instagram and Twitter with the hashtag PrimeCrime. As always, thank you for joining us. And until next time, be safe.